Welcome to the Dynamics of Everyday Life, where we demystify some tricky concepts and get to know ourselves a little bit better. Welcome back to the Dynamics of Everyday Life. Today I'm exploring the idea of sibling rivalry. I often wonder what Christmas dinner would have been like at the Murray household when Jamie Murray won a Wimbledon title well before his brother Andy did, Jamie being a doubles player and Andy a singles player, possibly a bit frosty when passing the roast potatoes. It's something I've considered more since I've been a parent to two children, who are the only children on either side of their families. They have no cousins, so I'm very aware of the dynamic between them. Up until now, they get on reasonably well, but who knows what will happen in the future? I also feel quite responsible for this. When my daughter was small and attending preschool, there was another girl there who had a younger sister. Let's call her Arabella, not her real name, and every time the older girl was asked to do something, maybe go on a play date or go to a party, the well-worn question would be straight out of the mother's mouth. But what about Arabella? And if Arabella was not invited or involved, it was extremely clear that this was not approved of. Arabella was obviously the golden child in her parents' eyes, and even her older, yet still preschool-age sister knew this. At times there would be fleeting looks across the older child's face, and I would wonder what she was thinking. My daughter is almost an adult now, and hasn't seen Arabella or her older sister for many years, but I often wonder what happened in that family dynamic. I'd be amazed if it hadn't had some impact. And whilst a lot is thrown at us parents that is a bit unfair, I do feel that we have at least some responsibility in how the relationships between our children develop, particularly in the early days when our children look to us to learn from. I'd also like to point out here that I'm no angel. My brother and I get on well now, but there are photos of us having proper fistfights on Cromer Beach when we were younger. As I'm the older of us, I felt quite confident in these when we were both under 10. Not so much though, as he grew to be quite a lot taller than me. So where does sibling rivalry play out in our everyday lives now? Our worlds are much larger places these days. We don't tend to live down the road from our families in the way that we might have done in the past. To use my example, my brother and I are rarely, if ever, on Cromer Beach together these days. The way that we work has changed too. So the sibling rivalry that we're experiencing might not actually be with our siblings. It could be with people that we have a sibling-style relationship with. What do I mean by this? I'm thinking here about examples such as colleagues at work, either as employees for the same organisation or as contractors, students at school or college, and friendship groups. Why does this happen? Let's have a think about this using some classical psychoanalytic theory. Freud talks about the stages of human development in relation to the Oedipus Complex. The myth of Oedipus is that unbeknownst to him, he murders his father and marries his mother. So for Freud, he felt that in mother-son relationships, the son wished to remove the father to have the mother all to himself. I'm not going to get deep into child psychology here, but being the mother of a son, I can confirm that there is definitely something in this. It's a bit more complicated in the mother-daughter relationship, and that's an episode all in itself, but the key point remains of wanting the parent's attention. Throw in the addition of siblings, either older or younger, and the competition intensifies. As the child grows, then feelings for the parents change and develop, with attention still being at the heart of the matter, but the competition between siblings has the potential to remain, especially if it is stoked, as in the previously mentioned case of Arabella. Instead of integrating the two daughters together, they're set against each other with seemingly preferential treatment. The term sibling rivalry wasn't actually introduced until the 1930s by the American child psychiatrist David Levy. Levy used play therapy and gave children dolls which they were told represented their younger sibling and breastfeeding mother, and they were encouraged to act out their feelings when their mother fed their sibling. The most common result was an angry and often murderous attack on the dolls. Levy reproduced this study with different cultures, and the result was the same. In this example, we can see that the child is angry with the sibling for, in their eyes, taking the mother away from them. How does this play itself out in the adult world? Let's have a think about the family type dynamics that we'll be part of, starting off with work. Unless you're a solopreneur, it's very likely that you'll be working in an organisation that has a defined structure, most likely hierarchical. The person who makes the decisions, the one who has the power, is at the top of this structure and represents the parental figure. Those underneath take the sibling role. In some organisations with flatter structures, this might mean that there are all kinds of other roles, such as uncles, aunts or grandparents, but the key roles are that of the parent and child. Have a think about the organisation you work in or have worked in. How does this dynamic play itself out? Do team members vie for the attention of the manager? Does the manager use this power as a kind, nurturing parent or a distant, withholding parent? Is competition rife within the organisation? Do new team members pose a threat to the established family group? Is there a new baby joining? I suspect you're not described to discover that at this point it's time to be getting out our defence mechanism bingo cards. Let's have a look at the ones we can mark off here. Denial. It's very common for parents to deny that this dynamic is happening or that they have any role in it. If you'd asked Arabella's mother if she had a preferred child, I doubt she would have seen that she very clearly did. Likewise, in an organisation, it's unlikely that a manager is going to say that they treat any team members differently, or that team members will acknowledge how they're feeling or behaving as a result of these feelings of competition. Rationalisation. We can always find very good reasons for our behaviour, especially when we're trying to convince ourselves that we've done the right thing, even when we know that we haven't. We've got avoidance. This is similar to denial, but it's more a case of we're aware that something is there, but we really don't want to talk about it, so we'll change the subject. We've also got projection. The bits that we don't like about ourselves are split off into other people, notably our sibling figure. As an example, let's bring back Barry from accounts from a previous episode. We can unconsciously realise that perhaps we haven't done something, but as we're denying this to ourselves, we split it off and locate it in Barry instead. Barry hasn't done this piece of work or sent the email, for example. We can move all those difficult feelings we have about ourselves and that we don't want our parent or manager to see into Barry and blame him. We can also mark off displacement, where we're moving our anger or other unacceptable feelings onto a different object. It might be very difficult for Arabella's sister to show how angry, hurt and upset that she was at her mother's obvious preferential treatment, especially towards Arabella. There may have been some serious repercussions. So it's highly likely that Arabella's sister took out her feelings elsewhere. It doesn't just have to be in the interpersonal aspects of work. Competitions and rivalries can develop between departments and organisations as a whole. As well as these dynamics playing out in a work scenario, these can also develop in friendship groups where there is one member of the group who is unconsciously allocated as the leader. Competition therefore develops between the rest of the group members as to who gets the attention of the leader. If we think back to films such as Mean Girls and Heathers, these feelings run deep and can have far-reaching effects. What can we do about this? My invitation for you this week is for you to consider where in your life you might have fallen into a sibling dynamic and some rivalry has started to either emerge or play out. Give yourself some grace around this. When I was talking to people about the concept for this episode, there was a huge amount of recognition around this. It's a well-known concept throughout history, religion and literature. Think about Richard III, Cain and Abel, and King Lear's daughters in Shakespeare. It happens. So now that you're aware of it, what part do you want to play? Do you want to continue in the dynamic, or can you adapt your approach to be more supportive to you? It's unlikely that getting into a sibling power dynamic is helpful to you, so what and how can you gain by stepping back from this? Who do you want to be in these relationships? Looking at ourselves at this level can be challenging and unnerving as we develop our awareness, so I'd always encourage that you do this at your own speed. If you feel you need some extra help around this, then I've put together a PDF resource sheet and you can find the link for this in the show notes. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Dynamics of Everyday Life. Please hit the follow button for future episodes and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on Instagram at The Dynamics of Everyday Life or find me on LinkedIn at Julia Rogers. I'd love to hear from you and hear your thoughts on dynamics. The Dynamics of Everyday Life is brought to you by Coaching 42 and the fabulous team at the Podcast Boutique.